Okay, so here we are going to be looking at how to work Excel Project 3. We're going to be working with scatter plots, correlations, and regression lines. So let's say that we have a table, right, with X and Y values. Let's say my X values are 12, 7, 6, 9, 11, 10, and 11. Let's say my Y values are 16, 8, 5, 2, 18, 11, and 17. So this is my table. I'm going to make it look a little bit more presentable like a table, right? So remember, we did this in the past. We outline it. We hit this box here um, where we will add borders. So it looks like a table now. So the first thing we're going to do here is I'm going to ask you to create a scatter plot for the given data. All right, so in order to create a scatter plot, I would just click in a separate cell. Let's click on this cell because this is where your graph will start. What you want to do is you want to highlight your data um, values. So you start at 10, and you do it from the top right, just like we did before. You go down to the bottom left. Notice that X and Y are not highlighted, right? The reason 12 is not highlighted because it's saying that's where we started from. So we highlight our data values. Then from there, just like we did in the past, we'll click on Insert on the top, right next to the Home button. Then from there, what we are going to choose is a scatter plot, right? So you should see this option on the top here where you just have a point scatter plot there. So you click that one. Some graphs will open up. You just choose that first one. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to click on it, hold it, and just move it a little bit. All right, so this is your scatter plot for your values. Now what we want to do is we just want to label the X and Y axis appropriately. We did this before as well, right? So when we click on this chart, we go to axis titles, right? We want my horizontal, which is x-axis. I'm going to label it x values. All right. Axis titles, the vertical. I'm going to label that the y values. The fact that it says series 1, I want to get rid of that. So if I'm not mistaken, I think that might be a legend. I'm going to turn that off, right? So all we really want is just the x values and the y values there. I see that I do have the horizontal grid lines, the ones that are going left and right, and also the ones that are going up and down. We definitely want those visible. So make sure your graph does look in this form. So that would be the first thing that I would ask you to do there. Then what I would ask you to do next, I'll put part B down here, right? I guess we can put it over here. Part B is I'm going to ask you to find the correlation coefficient. And remember, what we did there is we actually found the correlation coefficient by doing it the long way, right? We had your x values, you had your y. We made a table, right? You had your x values, your y values, then you multiply x and y. Then you did x to the power of 2. Then we did y to the power of 2, right? And what we did is, right, we completed the table, right? And we did all this math here. And then you had a formula as well. What we're going to see today is that we will not have to do any of that, just like finding the standard deviation. It's going to be very easy. But it is a little tricky, so you just want to be careful. Okay, so in order to find the correlation coefficient, let me just type this in, correlation coefficient. I'm going to put in the cell next to it. So I'm going to, remember, I want to see that whole word coefficient. I'm just going to double click this N. I see nothing happens because I typed everything in this cell M. So here I'm going to double click that, and now we should see it to be a little longer. Okay, so what is our correlation coefficient formula? We hit equals, we start typing correlation, and right away we see after COR, we see this, coral, right? So we double click that. What you're going to do first, and notice here how there's a comma there. You have to highlight all the x values first, right? You highlight all the x values by itself. Once you highlight all the x values by itself, you hit the comma button. After that, you highlight all the y values by itself. You can even notice on your graph over here that these are different colors right there. And then from there, you just hit enter, and that is your correlation coefficient. You should be able to, let me just put a couple outline boxes there. You should be able to round this as well. Round to the hundredths. Right, so I will let you do that on your own, but you should be comfortable with rounding that to the hundredths. Okay, I strongly encourage you to practice that a few times. So maybe as you're watching this video, pause, practice, pause, practice. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to ask you is to explain the correlation coefficient. All right, I'm going to ask you to explain that correlation coefficient. So in other words, what does that mean? What does this 0.776202 mean? Right, so you definitely want to understand that correlation coefficient. It wouldn't be a bad idea to go back and look at my video 12.6, my notes 12.6. I really talked about all these different correlation coefficients. I talked about a perfect correlation coefficient, a strong correlation coefficient, a weak to moderate to negative correlation coefficient, just to name a few examples. Okay, so moving on, what I'm going to ask you to do next, part D, I'm going to ask you to find the equation of the regression line. Right, so I'll ask for the slope, I'll ask for the y-intercept, and then I'll ask for the equation. Right, so these are the things that, nope, let me undo that. Remember, you could always undo over here. What I was trying to do is make a table for this. All right. So we want the slope, y-intercept, and the equation. So how do we do that? What we do is we come back to our graph, right? I'm going to click inside the graph, all right? And after I click inside the graph, I click on these charts, right? So I see that chart's highlighted. Let's see other charts. It looks a little different here, so let's see how I can find it. If well, what happens? Other charts, what happens? Click on, okay. How can we find our correlation regression line equation? So we click on the chart, we click on this chart part. Insert. Not really giving us an option. Let's see. No. Let me type in. Let's see if we can find how to add a trend line. Well, it's not really giving me that option, so I'm wondering if maybe we are limited to. Um, we might be limited to what we can do on this Excel since. Well, looks like we may not be able to do this part because I'm really not seeing an option that it's giving us here. I'm trying to find it because I think it's something good that we should all be able to do. But if it doesn't allow it, then if this feature is not available on here, I don't think we can add it on there. So so I guess what this will conclude our so I guess we will not have to um, find the equation of the regression line since this is not a feature. Um, since it is not a feature given to us. Okay, so with that being said, then I guess we can take off D. Right, we can take that off. And all I'll have you do then, take off those borders. All I have you do is just these three parts. Create the scatter plots, find the correlation coefficient, make sure you round it appropriately, and explain the correlation coefficient. From there, you can just type your name and send it to me. And if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.